Ladies and gentlemen, for at least a day, we are changing the name of this show from the Unconventional Pastor to the Crotchety Gold Mining Hermit. Why, you ask? I don't know. It was done by request. Find out in just a moment.
Well, good evening. It's great to be back with you here on this Sunday evening. And I'm Bob Greaves, and they call me the crotchety old miserly gold digger. And so it's good to be back with you tonight, hoping that I get a lot of gold out of this tonight. But anyhow, I want to talk to you a little bit about gold tonight. You know, gold has been around a long time. It's been considered a valuable commodity, both in its raw form, that is, or it's in a purified form, where all it is just a hunk of gold, or to the objects that might be made out of gold. It possesses value, and it's always, for a lot. Well, I shouldn't say always, but for a long time, it's been something that mankind has thought of as very valuable. These days, I don't even know how much goes for an ounce. But, Jesus mentioned things about gold, and gold is talked about in the Bible in both in terms of what it represents monetarily and symbolically. It's been spoken of. If we find, like, for example, in the Proverbs, where we're encouraged to seek out wisdom and knowledge, and to gain in our understanding, and to regard that sort of valuable thing as if it were silver, as if it were gold. And of course, this is using gold in a metaphoric, by analogy, that we can clearly understand what we might perceive as the value of the money and of the precious metals. But when it comes to knowledge and wisdom and insight and understanding, let's not think of this as anything that isn't just as valuable. Jesus, I think there was one time when he was talking about some of the habits that people had in his day, where it reminds me of that movie, A Christmas Story, where oh no, the triple dog dare. Oh, that's the big dare, and kind of a crazy scene there where the boy ends up getting his tongue stuck to a flagpole. But there was a habit, I guess, in Jesus' day where some people would try to give emphasis and strength to something they're saying by swearing by the temple, or swearing by the gold of the temple. And Jesus was thinking that some of this was kind of silly, when he's asking what's greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold. He's talking about some of their odd little rules that they had about talking about gold and the temple and all that. But the Old Testament and the New Testament also use this concept of gold as talking about us. And, this analogy is not just something that's, it isn't just an object lesson that is, we'll look at the value of gold, and you too, you are valuable. The concept of gold was used as an analogy, not just because of what gold was as something valuable, but the process and the difficulty that we had to go through in order to come up with gold. When gold is found in the ground, you might find veins of it here and there, but it's mixed with a variety of impurities, and it's not as if you're digging and you find a gold brick or something. It doesn't work that way. And so you need a smelting process, a way of refining the gold and bringing it out to make it pure. And so over from centuries ago, mankind learned how to mine the gold and to separate the gold from all the junk that it's caught up in to bring it out. And one of the things I think is interesting is that they'd put all the gold ore, just everything that's dug out of the ground, into a large pot that would then get heated. And of course they'd heat it because gold melts, and most of the junk that's in the gold doesn't. And so the gold, being also very heavy and melting in the pot, sinks down to the bottom, and then the objects that are in the gold can be lifted up and held over the hot pot, and any gold remaining in it might be able to then drip down in until the gold is gone, and then you can discard all the other junk. And eventually you get to the point to where you have almost a gold soup, but there's still a lot of junk in it. And because the gold is very heavy, the junk will continuously rise to the surface, and where it can be then, kind of skimmed off, and then so that the gold that might be even stuck to it yet can still drain into the pot. And the smelter would continuously do this in skimming the dross off of the top. And they would know when they were done, when they could look into the pot, and the gold was so clean that when he looks into the pot, it's like looking into a mirror, and he can see his own reflection. And so that was when that can happen. Oh, look at that. I can see my face in there very clearly. Then he knows that, well, we've purified this gold well enough. We can maybe pour it into some sort of a mold, or just, let it harden here and then crack the pot open. And then we have a pot-shaped piece of gold, whatever. But that was part of the process. And that process of gold, of smelting it, was often used as an analogy for the process that we as human beings go through when we go through difficulties and problems, trials, and troubles. And that this is something that refines us, helps us to become better people. Helps us to realize the need to be better people. I mean, if there weren't troubles and trials in this world, the truth is we wouldn't need to be better people. And so the only reason we really need to be better people is because being better people is going to produce better outcomes, and not being better people is going to produce worse outcomes. So it just happens to be fortunate enough that it also works this way, that going through many different difficulties and troubles, as we face them with character, with integrity, and with honesty, helps us to refine ourselves and to become even better people. And this is one of the analogies that is actually used about in the biblical text, to talk about the process of some of the difficulty that people who love God will go through. And one such section is actually in 1 Peter, where Peter, or whoever the author is here, is talking about that these people have come to a point where they have experienced what they have found to be a great mercy, a great opportunity, a new life, a new birth to life, and that they have this new hope and this new power for living that has come through, the way he puts it, this resurrection of Jesus Christ, and from the dead, and that they now realize they are human beings who possess an eternal future, one that is eternal, and it can't perish. It's just never going to go away, and that it's safeguarded by God himself. It's not even something that's in their own hands, as it were, that they could somehow mess up. That their eternal state is something they can feel quite confident about, and yet it's not that everything about them is wonderful, perfect, and mature, and everything that it ought to be yet, nor that it has to be right now either. But it's this process that the person of faith may discover that that in spite of all the difficulties and trials and troubles of life, as they seek to find out what it means to be in relationship with God, and as if any of you know me, that it's that I'm a person who strongly talks about the fact that God lives in us. He wants to live in us. In us is his home in a very real sense, and that we experience this inarticulate, almost in a mystical sense, deep within ourselves, the presence of God within us, and that. And yet we still struggle in life, sometimes in developing and growing up and maturing, becoming the better people we really can be, and that we're in process. And this confidence that is being spoken of here in the book of Peter is one where he talks about all the difficulties and troubles we go through, even though we have this confidence of what our destiny is to be. And that then he goes on. I see. I can find it here. I'm looking at a copy of it right here. It says, "In this you greatly rejoice, even now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." Now, I read that from the NIV translation, and I do think that the translation is biased in the way it's trying to translate this in a manner where it seems like it's talking about the return of Jesus and the end of the age. But I really don't think that that's the purpose of this particular text. I don't think that's what's really talking about. I think what it's talking about is the person who has a sense of living loved in union with God, who feels loved by God, who has that sense that they are loved by God, who has that confidence to believe that their life is to be a life where they are love, where they live with love, where they try to and I'll tell you what, just as Dr. Jones oftentimes will begin his show saying, this is the place for intellectual, spiritual, and biblical honesty. And he'll sometimes say, we're not claiming that we've attained to this honesty, rather that we are striving for this honesty. And I would want to say the same thing. I want my life to be a life where I live loved. I want my life to be a life where I live loving. And that's not to say that I always live loved or that I'm always a loving person, but that this is a striving that I'm going for. And as I do that striving, I find sometimes I'm succeeding, sometimes I'm not succeeding so well, and sometimes I'm in situations where I don't even know what that looks like. Sometimes I don't even know what the loving thing to do would be. I'm not even really sure. And so I struggle for this. But I think this verse is talking about that very struggle, those trials, those difficulties, and some of the things that I may face where it might be a reality of my life that my life isn't going to turn out the way I'd hoped it would. I mean, we have a pretty good life here in America, but I mean, what if we were to be invaded by a foreign power and we're in risk of this and risk of that, and then next thing I know, I got enemy soldiers at my door, and I'm only 5 minutes away from being executed just for being an American. Thank God I don't see anything like that on the horizon soon, but that things like that do happen to some people who live loved and who live as loving. And a lot of horrible things have happened to all sorts of human beings who were people who really had this as their goal, to live loved and to live loving. And this trial, these difficulties of life, present them with challenges, with options, with dilemmas, with trials, that as they struggle with them, as they resolve them in a manner where love wins, they find it changes them. It makes them better people. It makes them people who are, in a sense, refined. Their faith is like gold. And what I see this text talking about in a very real sense is that there's a sense in which I think what it's talking about is that God in our lives, in union with us, is like that refiner, the smelter, and that living loved and living loving is going to put us into the trials and difficulties of life in a very unique way that can refine us as people, make us better people, people who are committed to a far better quality of lifestyle, far better quality of relating to others. And so there's a sense in which it is this presence of God in us that refines us. And I think that part of what this verse is really talking about is that as we go through that refining, there comes a point in time where the gold becomes clear enough, pure enough. The faith becomes clear enough. The loving that we try to do becomes clear enough and pure enough that when God is looking at us, he can see his own reflection in the gold. And this is the appearance of Jesus Christ. And that what we have here is, in a sense, the working out of the indwelling God within us through the struggles of striving towards living loved and living as a loving person. We make inroads to that struggle. We gain ground with that struggle. And as that struggle continues, it gets to the point where we do become a reflection of God in this life. And that this is, in a sense, part of what may even be spoken here about it could be almost kind of a metaphoric use of the concept of the resurrection of Christ from the dead. That we're talking about a refining of faith here. And I think it's important to recognize that in the biblical text, this is one of the themes that I think that we see from time to time, is this concept of the refined metal being used as an analogy for our own character, for who it is we are. Now, I remember early on, I think it was way back in August, that I actually did a couple of shows where I talked about theology and my concept of what theology ought to be. And I remember early on saying something to this effect, that I'm really not impressed with these theologies that try to talk about attributes of God, that he's omniscient, he's omnipotent, he's this and he's, and all these things that try to describe him as if we were doing some sort of an autopsy of God. But that rather, I really felt that when I look at the story of Jesus and what is revealed about God that seems to be clear to us when Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." That what we see primarily as coming across to us to relate to is the character of God. God is love. I think that even knowing this helps us to begin to then fetter through some of the flack that religion has taken on, and some of the flack that even the religionists within the Bible have taken on, so that we begin to see a distinction between who God really is as seen through Jesus Christ, and who God has been alleged to be as seen through other people grasping either for God or trying to express to us what they imagine is true about God, having experienced him authentically for themselves, but still trying to make sense of it in light of their own biased perspective. That I see God as defined more, as being far more known in the sense that we can be known in terms of character rather than in terms of attributes. And so this concept of gold even goes back here when we see that analogy of gold used for, the gold goes into the bucket and or the pot or whatever it's in, and there's a fire under it, and that there's something being used to scrape the stuff away. That this is analogous to the process of scraping all the dross of ourselves away. Now, I said that incorrectly for a deliberate reason. I said that it scrapes off all of the dross of ourselves away. But there's something I think is important to recognize in this analogy that I think is often lost, and that is this: when you refine the gold may be found in the ground with all this junk in it. But the process of smelting it and removing all that junk out of the gold and taking all of the dross, skimming it off the top, all of the dross that gets scraped away and tossed away is not gold. It was never gold. It never will be gold. And what I'm saying is this, that we live in a world where particularly religionists want your identity to be found in just the kind of a person you've shown yourself to be. And I want to argue that that's not your identity, and that's not a fair or honest way of even looking at ourselves. If we were to go through this process and struggle to live loved and to live loving, and we allow that struggle to allow us to come to a point in our own lives where through the trials and struggles that precipitates for us, that we become people where this emerges, all the things that get shaved away are things that are not us, never were us. They're just things that are in us. An example, your perspective. Your perspective is not you, it's just your perspective. You're capable of having other perspectives, and given enough good reason, you would have a different perspective. So your perspective isn't really you. The way you see things isn't you. The way you feel isn't you. It's your feelings, but it's not you. And many of your feelings are based upon an inaccurate focus, an inaccurate perspective. And so I think it's very important that we realize that just like when my finger hurts because I have a splinter in it, the splinter is not me. And the pain is my pain, but the pain is not me. The struggles, the trials, they're not me. The way I'm dealing with them, the way I'm thinking about them, the way I'm feeling about them, that's not me. The person who finally shows up when all of this struggle has done its work and this dross is removed, that's the me that was always there, is still there, will never go away, was always valuable, was never, ever at any time connected with, in any identifiable way, with the dross that was simply mixed in with it. And this is one of the reasons why I really think for a healthy sense of identity, one way we could put it, and this isn't an entirely correct way of putting it, but it's a more helpful way of putting it. Our identity should not be the person we have been. It'd be healthier for us to make it our identity to be the person we see that we are becoming. And that's not because we don't yet have that identity, but I'm saying that that is our identity, and that is our identity right now. We just can't see it for all the dross that's in the way. This is why the reflection of God doesn't show in us all the time. And it's none of the stuff that obscures that reflection is us. It isn't you. It isn't me. It isn't part of who we essentially are as beings, as human beings. The person you could be, if that process were to continue on to full and mature completion, that's the real you. That's the real gold. That's the real you that has been there all the time. And all that other crap is not you. Don't let it be your identity. The struggle you're going through is not you. Now, this might sound a little mystical or a little weird to try to understand, but for me, embracing this concept a couple of decades ago radically changed my life, coming out of a home that left me with a pretty destroyed identity, a pretty destroyed sense of self. When I began to see this analogy that I am the me that is emerging, and that this me that is emerging is right now obscured by things that are not me, never were me. They're foreign to me. They're not even part of my nature. They're not me. I ceased to allow them to be anything that made me feel, well, that's just who I am. No, it is not. It's just the way things are going right now at this point in the struggle and the trial of the purification of the experiences of life as I seek to better grasp what it means to live loved and to live loving. And the more that I have identified myself as that person that will one day clearly be seen, that is really there even now, the more that struggle has been easier to take, the more that struggle has been a struggle of joy, a struggle of hope, a struggle of a sense of where this destiny is headed. And this is the sense in which I understand the love and the life of God in me. This is the purpose of it. It gives to me the hope of recognizing that my acceptance to God has nothing to do with God getting pissed off over all the wicked, evil crap that is me. And so that I finally get this Jesus mask so I can put it on so that we fool God into thinking that I'm somebody kind of like Jesus, even though we all know I'm really just a creep. But by investing myself in this different way of thinking differently, isn't that what the word repentance really means? Yes, it is. Metanoia, a change of mind, a paradigm shift. Thinking of the struggles that I am in a manner where who it is I see myself as, who it is I think I am, I realize that I am the righteousness of God in Christ. That's who I am. That's not a Jesus mask. That's me. And that this is something that I need to realize is the whole reason why Jesus came. He says the kingdom of God is with you. Basically, and you could summarize Jesus' message as saying this: you want God? He's right here. There's no issues between you and God. Nothing. Reach out and grab him. And in fact, about the only problem you're going to have with that, the only real obstacle you're going to have is religious people who want you to feel guilty, want you to have to go through their processes and their systems and give them money and go through their rituals and go through their sacraments and all of that in order for you to feel like you're getting close to where God can tolerate your existence. You know, the Jesus message was this message of what you have life, it'll have life abundantly. And this wasn't some, pie in the sky when you die by and by, or some illusion of hope, or some trick, or a carrot left out in front of you. This is something that the message of Christ within you, the hope of glory, that our identity of who we are, being the righteousness of Christ, is something that is an attempt for those who understood this message to declare to us as a very real present reality. And the failure to see that present reality clearly is an honest reality, because there are honestly things that obscure that reality. And they are there, and they really obscure that reality. But the good news is this: everything that obscures that reality is not the real you. Not one bit of it. The real you is a person who, if that person can emerge through this trial of living loved and living loving, is a person who is just as awesome, just as wonderful, just as loving as Jesus himself was, because that's the real you, and you were made in the image of God. And that gold that is you is the you that has always been you, always will be you, and that is the eternal value of who you are as a person. And that is the discovery that you are in the process of making. Now, this is the understanding that I have had of the concept of our identity in Christ, instead of a concept of where, we're nothing but wicked sinners, and we're going through a process of being reformed. I don't need any reformation. I might need a little house cleaning. I might need a few trials. I might need to go through a bit of fire. I might need to go through situations and situations that challenge me to understand and to really truly appreciate what it's going to cost me and what the outcome, valuable as it will be if I find a way this time to live loved and to live loving. This is the gold that is in our faith. And this is the kind of thing that I think is very important for us to recognize is a key part of what our faith is. This is also something that I have not talked about a lot lately, mostly because I really felt the need to talk about a great number of issues that I think have been terribly distorted by institutionalized religion, by the current state of the gospel, as in my opinion, totally destroyed and misrepresented by fundamentalism, evangelicalism, by Protestantism, Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox. I mean, the whole thing. It's become a system whereby people are trying to find ways of having a little bit of control over your spirituality, when the truth is, you may need some help. You may need people to be with you and to do in various ways. But the truth is, you already are, and you already have everything you need. We just need to take what's there and put it to the test, put it into the situations and circumstances of life. And by being in those very circumstances and situations while you struggle to see what it is, to truly live as one who knows they are loved by God, and truly struggles to live in those situations as one who is loving. This is the refinement of you that will finally emerge step by step in that process. Looks like we have a viewer comment. How can I just somehow choose to believe that I'm loved or live loved if I've never experienced this God showing me his love? I think that is an excellent question. I think that I think this is an almost impossible thing to do until you have actually had a relationship with somebody who loved you, not just with affection, but loved you because they truly, honestly, and vitally regarded you as a very precious existence, the whole package, including even all your flaws, which I am going to say are not even the real you. Those are just things obscuring the real you. That if you've ever had a relationship with anybody who has been able to show you this kind of love, that it becomes an easier thing once it's been genuinely experienced to appreciate and understand how this would be the way that God loves you. Or else God isn't real love, it's just a sham. It's just another one of those religious manipulations to get you to kind of latch on to the community of faith. But I do believe that human beings psychologically are people who cannot muster this up themselves until they can derive it from some source that gives it to them. This is why babies die if they don't get love. If a baby is born and just left in a crib and never held or cuddled, or they die. I mean, you can even feed them and do this, but if you never give them a sense of embracement, this has serious psychological and health effects upon the baby. Human beings are people who show by their very nature of their health and their psychology how it is they thrive when vitally loved and how it is they do not thrive when they're not vitally loved. So my answer is this. You need to surround yourself with people who seem to be the quality of people who are not just going to shower you with affection so as to kind of win you into their love cult, but people who are going to respect you, respect your independence, respect your need to even suffer some consequences of your own foolishness to a certain degree, but also who regard you very positively and honestly and authentically. And if you can find these people and engage yourself in relationship with them, you will find this will spark something within you that makes it far easier for you to experiment with the idea that God loves you. And I don't, for every person, this is a slightly different path. For me, It was sometime in the mid '70s when I finally had an experience where I really did know that nothing else made sense, but that I was just passionately adored by God. And that was for me a very solid moment of change. Didn't happen immediately, but it was the moment that from which all the changes that proceeded thereafter drew out of. It was a vital experience, very hard, and that struggle that I went through was not easy until I finally did meet somebody who found me in a raw moment where I was struggling in a way where I was not as nice a person as I ought to be in many ugly ways. And this person genuinely loved me, respected me, understood me, did not condemn me. And the experience of that really fanned that other experience until it allowed me to emerge into a much more solid faith. But it is a struggle, and that's an honest question. I think it also means that the way to really preach the gospel, don't go around telling people Jesus wants you to come to him and accept him as your personal. You don't need that. Find people who are hurting and love them. Be love to them. And you know what? You do that, and they'll figure it out on their own of who God is. I think it's really once a person has experienced a real sense of vital love, it's not that big of a leap for them to then begin to embrace God in this way and to reject a God who doesn't love them in that way. Notions of that kind of a God. Anyway, we have other viewer comments. Bob, you said you had this unexplained experience that you believe was God. That seems to be the strength of your faith. But what about me? That is a powerful statement. I think that is the kind of a powerful statement that word "me" there is a huge plural. There's a big number in that word "me" there, and I think, what about me? I love you. I don't even know you, and I realize that that's kind of just words, and it isn't anything with real presence in it, or with real practical, realistic honesty that connects. I recognize that, so I'm not trying to just kind of frivolously throw that at you. But again, I would have to say that you're going to have to find people who seem to possess that sort of maturity, and chances are you're not going to find a lot of them in church. I hate to say it. You can find some people there. And sometimes, sometimes your older saints, people who've been there in the church a long time, mature into that kind of a thing, where all the theology that has been muck in their mind has gone by the wayside, and they have become very loving people. I think my mother-in-law was one of those people. Although she was in a fundamentalist church and this and that, as she got up in years, she became just a dear person, a person who loved everybody and showed a great deal of affection, acceptance, and authentic concern for everybody in her life. And she was just a dear person. And we miss her so much since she's passed. But I would say, what about you? I think that if you can find other people, look for them. They're there. And I'll tell you what, sometimes the people who love you most are not the people that you would think would love you most. Because part of the reason, I hate to say this, part of the reason that most of us don't live loved is because we don't really know what love is. And the people that we think love us are just people who are showering us with affection or manipulative praise. And to find people who truly have a genuine, authentic appreciation for who we are as people, not that common, but if you can find them, these are people that if you connect yourself with, they will give you an experience upon which you can build. And I think it really takes that. It is a sense in which learning to live loved and learning to love is something that really requires the spark of having it modeled upon you. before it becomes easy to do. But it does get easier. And of course, one of the things you can do is you can try to learn to actually love yourself this way. And that'll take you a long way. But I don't know that this is going to be easy. But I'll tell you this: if you've got notions of God that notion exempts him from that, I think you need to stop paying attention to that kind of a God too, because that's just going to stay in your way. You don't need that kind of crap. Viewer comments. Let me read. Viewer comment. Sounds like it's completely out of my control, Bob. Like there's nothing I can do but wait if I want to be able to live loved. Feels hopeless. Is it inevitable that this would happen to me, or do some people go their entire life without having this gift given to them? I hate to tell you, but I think there are many people who go through their entire life without that gift given to them. And I think that it is primarily the failure of us people, that we have not focused our lives on that kind of love and recognizing how important and valuable it is. And I think that in many ways, this is the failure of people who claim to be people of faith in God. And so too many of them are trying to be faithful to the creed instead of faithful to the people who are precious to God. And it is a shame. But I don't know that it's entirely hopeless. The very fact that you're even talking to me and sending me this comment is an indication that you're aware of this emptiness, or aware of this lack of opportunity. And so I would encourage you, find people in your proximity, people you can actually have a connection and a relationship with, people who will know you, people you can risk who you really are with, and people who will understand no matter what it is you show them. They will understand. They will even appreciate your need to even go through changes, but they will totally respect you in the process of that. You find those people, and I think they can help you greatly to make that opportunity one that comes your way. But then the question was also, does this happen to everyone? I do believe that even people who live their entire lives never having that will find that in the phase we go into after death, that they will enter into that. It's a shame that they didn't have that sooner. And I think that for the most part, it is our failure. Those of us who have come to know this love are not supposed to be keeping it to ourselves. And we're not supposed to be giving it to other people only if they'll listen to what I have to say and preach about Jesus. I think that the more we can treat people with genuine dignity and honesty and care, the more that we are able to express ourselves to others where they need love, real love, vital love, not just affection, that we can make this thing more viral, the way it ought to be, the way it would be good for it to be. And this is one of the missions that I think that the so-called church has failed at. They think they're supposed to be spreading the religion when we're not. We're supposed to be spreading the reality of who we are as people of love, and who people are as people worthy of that love in and of themselves. They really are deep inside. More viewer comments. I really feel for the viewer, and while your honesty is amazing, Bob, most pastors would be tempted to fabricate some sort of guaranteed hope. What I would say to the viewer is that you can control who loves you or when they love you, but you can't control who you love when you love. If no one loves you, or if it feels that way, you might consider what is in your control. Loving others can feel as good and sometimes better as feeling loved. You can experience so much love just loving others. That is a very true statement. In fact, I think that in a healthy, well-developing person, that the more freedom you finally acquire in being able to do this, the more you find the love that has come your way endures. And it's not like you ever have to, I need to go back and get another fix of love. My own personal experience has been there came a day in my life where I just never felt unloved anymore. And I am very well aware of the fact that not everybody feels that way, and that's terrible. Um, because I tell you, it's made a huge difference in my life. But it's I can't tell you the last time I did not feel that I was a person truly worthy of the love of God. Um, and that doesn't mean that everything that I do is right, or that I'm proud of everything that comes out of me. Because as I was telling you, like with this concept of the gold, I also recognize that's not the me that I'm becoming. That's just some of that dross coming to the surface. That's not even the real me, and that stuff's got to go. And I don't mind seeing it go. Good thing when it goes, But it is true though that by seeking to see that, when you begin to, if you seek to even love others, when you begin to experience and see the outcome that produces in their life, you start to get even more honest about. A lot of us feel so unworthy of love that the truth is, and here's something that may seem strange to you, and I don't mean to do this for a guilt trip. Some of us are surrounded by a lot more love than we're seeing. We're not looking for it. We don't feel worthy of it, and we're kind of avoiding it because it makes us feel uncomfortable, or we're so convinced of our unworthiness that we don't like that. In fact, I can remember even at a time when I think I used to feel almost like it was unethical of me to think well of myself because I'm terrible. I'm really just a disgusting piece of crap. And and for people to really like me or to regard me as valuable felt to me like something almost unethical. And I can remember days when I felt that way. And so it's possible that many of you are surrounded by people who really do have a degree of caring for you and loving for you in a very honest way, but it's just uncomfortable into the obstacles that you put up to being able to receive it as that. More viewer comments. I appreciate the other viewer's comment. I'm with you there. I think it was very, very real, very honest. That is where the rubber meets the road in the way we are living our lives, without some sort of illusion of awesomeness and how wonderful spirituality is and all that other stuff. I agree. I appreciate the other viewer's comment. I've experienced love. I just don't think I've experienced love from God. You know, I really think that God is, we describe God with concepts. But those are just working models. In reality, God is inarticulate, inexpressible. If you've experienced love, the image of God in us, you've experienced God. You just didn't realize that's God. That's the image of God. And I'll tell you, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see much of a difference between what I look like and what I look like in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? And when we reflect the love of God as the image of God, and as that comes through, it doesn't matter. There's a sense in which this is the love of God. There's no real difference in it. And God being articulate, sometimes when we give up trying to conceptualize him, just breathe the air and realize he's in it, as it were, that location means nothing, and that God has no issues with you. It can almost instead of resolving this issue, it kind of dissolves the issue. It just kind of floats away. And for each person, that may be a little different, but I think sometimes our religious concepts and notions of who God is, what he must be, really just gets in our way. You don't even really need a concept of God. I think it's even possible to live loved, even if you think it's just nature that loves you, as it were. And I don't think God is so much of an egotist that he's going to be bothered by that. I think our need to be loved is so vital that I think it just would be great joy to God for you to ever experience love in an authentic way from anywhere that it may come, and that this can grow on you. And I also don't think God is the kind of an egotist where it's absolutely vital and important that you understand where this source really comes from, because you got to give God the glory. if he's that immature, he doesn't love you. So I hear the struggle. I'm not too worried about it. Find the love. The other stuff will come in time, and so I'm not really too worried about it. And the truth is, you're learning to experiment with what it is to live as a person worthy of love and a person who seeks to live love. That is far more important than whether or not you ever settle into some tangible notion of God that you can begin to embrace. I really think it's far more important that the love begin to nurture within you an emergence of your real self. And I'd encourage you to do that. Well, anyway, there we go. I'm a crotchety old gold digger looking for gold, and the truth is, all I want from you is your gold, and so I'm a gold digger tonight, and no longer really being in any manner altruistic. So anyhow, thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak to you tonight, and we'll see you again later on Wednesday. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the crotchety gold digger. We hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to call him the Unconventional Pastor once again. Stay tuned. In just a few minutes, Dr. Michael W. Jones and Rhonda Jones will be on stage with guests and panelists talking about the belief of hell. Is there anything rational about it? Does it make any sense at all? We hope that you will chime in